One more presentation for today. I'd like to introduce Tim Harrison, Managing Director for Ionic Rare Earths Limited. Tim initially joined the company in the role of Project Manager of Makuutu Rare Earths Project at the start of 2020, and since then he's been driving development and value creation and was appointed CEO in June 2020 and subsequently appointed Managing Director in December 2020. Tim holds a Bachelor of Chemical Engineering and has over 20 years of experience and an extensive and successful track record in the fields of both mineral processing and hydrometallurgy across multiple commodities. Mr. Harrison has been involved in project development, process and flowsheet development, studies, test work planning and supervision, engineering, construction, commissioning, operations and project management. Over to you, Tim.
Thanks, Ben. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for the opportunity to speak today. Thank you to PayDirt for putting on this event. Ionic Rare Earths, we're developing a magnet and heavy rare earth supply chain driven from a very unique asset that we have in Uganda, Makuutu. Just our cautionary statement. So the drive for magnet rare earths is driven by an increased demand that's going to come to facilitate all of the EVs and offshore wind capacity that's going to need to be built in order for the delivery or the ability to achieve net zero carbon targets. When we look at the current magnet supply chain or magnet rare earth supply chain, and we understand the processing and the mining and processing and ultimately the conversion of rare earths into magnets, it's a completely dominated supply chain by China. So the opportunity for Ionic is obviously the development of Makuutu, but then the ability to go downstream, looking at unlocking the value of the product, being able to build that supply chain. And beyond that, we're also looking at magnet recycling. So that supply chain is driven by obviously the asset at Makuutu. It's one of only a couple of near development ready ionic adsorption clays that are outside of southern China and Myanmar. These type of assets are very strategically important because they've provided the Chinese with an opportunity to build the dominance in the rare earth space. Earlier this year, we updated our mineral resource estimate, and the mineralisation at Makuutu stretches across a 37-kilometre long mineralisation trend. It's near surface and can be processed via a very simple salt wash, effectively a heap leach type process where we wash the clay with a salt solution. We chemically extract the rare earths in an elemental form from the clay and to produce a value-added mixed rare earth carbonate product. So it's not a mineral concentrate, it's a chemical precipitate. That product also has no radionuclides, which is another advantage of the ionic adsorption clays and a real differentiator when compared with hard rock, light rare earth dominant projects. With going downstream, we're evaluating the opportunity to develop a refinery. We are completing a study on that at the moment. We've been doing location analysis so we can understand where we would potentially develop a facility and what the major inputs would be, where we would look to build one potentially in the future. We are looking obviously at the potential then to go further in the supply chain with supply chain partners, that being potentially metals, alloys and magnets. So there's a bit of work going on in that space. We've also been looking at magnet recycling, and that's really around the whole vertical integration and circular economy of rare earths, especially the magnet rare earths, which are going to be increasingly more difficult to source in the future. The basket from Makuutu is a very high value basket, dominant in both magnet and heavy rare earths. So again, very different to many of the hard rock projects being developed or being evaluated, certainly on the ASX. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the appeal of the product, the appeal of the basket is driven by the demand that's coming for EVs and offshore wind. Every month the projections on the potential demand increases. to the point where it's very difficult to understand where this material is going to come from. The reality is that the world is going to need as much rare earth as it possibly can find. Moving on, just a snapshot of our corporate structure. So Makuutu itself is a large graben, so it's a large sedimentary basin with granite outcroppings on the north and south that have weathered over time. That weathering process has released the rare earths, which has been washed down and absorbed onto the clay. It's a large system. As I mentioned before, it stretches across a 37-kilometre long mineralisation trend, near surface, free dig, and the clay zone typically sits under about 3 metres of cover and can be anywhere from 5 to 30 metres thick. So the development of Makuutu is likely to have a very low strip ratio. As I mentioned earlier, we announced a resource estimate update earlier this year. We do have a resource of over 532 million tonnes. So we are looking at the development of Makuutu as being a multi-generational ionic adsorption clay asset with the potential for an initial MLA, which we're looking to apply for by the end of October, with a starter project that enables us to get into production and look at de-risking the project. We currently own 51% of Makuutu. We moved to a 60% ownership on the completion of a feasibility study, and we have a preemptive right on the remaining 40%. When we look at the basket, it is a very strategically important asset that has grown in importance over the last 2 years, certainly with issues around supply chain and the emergence or the better understanding that a number of the elements within the Makuutu basket are simply impossible to source, or at the moment, you can't produce anything outside of southern China and Myanmar. Again, presents a great opportunity for the development of Makuutu. All of the infrastructure is already there, so we're beneficiaries of having about 800 megawatts of installed low-cost hydroelectric power immediately available to the project. We've got roads, rail, mobile phone communications, so we're very fortunate with the infrastructure that exists. Beyond the resource, we've got substantial potential to expand that resource long term. We've got an exploration target with the potential to double that resource again, and a new province to the northwest. Just moving through, obviously a key focus of the development of the project is the ESG focus. We've worked through an environmental and social impact assessment. We submitted that document in December last year. We recently completed our public hearings. We had tremendous support, and thank you to our Ugandan delegates for the support that we've obviously had in country. We wouldn't have been able to do it without their support, especially through COVID. There's a focus on the development of the project with a very low carbon footprint. We are in the process of completing a life cycle analysis, which again I think will be a useful tool for us to help investors understand the opportunity with Makuutu relative to other rare earth projects being developed globally. We are looking at the rehabilitation program and aligning the way in which we rehabilitate Makuutu post-mining, aligned to the production of food and industry and opportunities for local stakeholders. And obviously, with regards to the support and the engagement in Uganda, we did do a tremendous amount of work on the community engagement. We continue to build our workforce within Uganda, hiring Ugandans, using Ugandan service providers, and building that capability long term. So just talking about our recent public hearings. So back at the start of August, we had 2 public hearings. We had over 3,800 registered stakeholders attend. We also had about 64,000 interested onlookers from Twitter. So it's a project that does have a lot of support in Uganda, and again, very grateful for that support that we've received. The resource itself, we've drilled our resource over 26 kilometres of the 37-kilometre long mineralisation trend. there is the potential to grow it substantially. But looking at the development of the project and the mining license application, we're really just focused on the Makuutu Central area. That's the license that's up for a mining license application due by the end of October. So that's really the focus for us to move forward. Beyond that, obviously the exploration target out to the east, we've identified a number of other provinces, including potential continuity along that radiometric anomaly along the Basin Channel and potentially up to the northwest. Our experience in Uganda has been very, very good. As the previous presentation, the Honourable Minister presented, businesses in Uganda can be 100% foreign owned, and we've obviously been a beneficiary of a lot of support in government with a desire to be developing a mining industry, beneficiary of a very transparent process for mining applications and exploration licenses. So we've been able to expand the initial footprint of the project from roughly around 120 square kilometres back in August 2019 when we started, or we took our initial 20% interest in the project, to now nearly 300 square kilometres. The product itself will have tremendous appeal, obviously, in enabling industries downstream, renewable energy, EVs, and obviously applications in military and defence. So we are looking at markets in both Europe and the US, and we do see a potential there to maybe look at even value addition in the long term, working with the Ugandan government to build capability and capacity. It's going to be an exercise. It's going to take some time, but working together to find a way to make sure that Uganda can benefit from this asset long term. With regards to the supply chain, and looking at building out supply chains and being able to, help Western governments build that, we're able to obviously do the mining with the inclusion of a refinery to separate it into individual rare earth oxides. But there needs to be a tremendous amount of investment that has to happen in both metal making, alloy production, powder production, and magnets. And so without that downstream supply chain, it really is a very difficult exercise in developing rare earth assets. And as a requirement, you really do have to have the right strategic partners. And as such, we've been looking at that for the last year, and we continue to have very fruitful discussions, but there's a lot of education that needs to continue to occur in order to be able to develop these supply chains. Just covering off on magnet recycling. So earlier this year, we did acquire a business, a technology company with rare earth separation refining IP out of Belfast in the UK. We're in the process of integrating them, and we're looking also at a demonstration plant to be able to produce an appreciable amount of individually separated rare earth oxides. It's a very unique technology, and we'll be able to provide a little bit more colour on that over the coming months. So with the value proposition for Ionic, obviously we've got a tremendous asset with Makuutu. It's a large system. It's a modular development potential, long life, multi-generational asset with a high value basket and a low capital. So we do see a great opportunity to get Makuutu into production within a short space of time, aiming having product out of Makuutu in the second half of 2024. A path to being vertically integrated. So with a unique basket like ours, there's substantial opportunity with going downstream and developing heavy rare earth separation. In order to build a heavy rare earth refinery, you've got to have the heavy rare earths, and that's the differentiator for us. We've got the product, therefore there's a tremendous upside that can be unlocked. And I think the addition of magnet recycling is going to be an area that increases in importance over the rest of this decade and beyond, in its ability to be able to source, or unlock secondary sources of magnet rare earths. So look, we've got a lot of work to do over the next few months. We expect there'll be a number of catalysts as we work towards the mining licence application and ideally and hopefully a mining licence award in early 2023 and a path to production with Makuutu in 2024. So thank you very much.